Speaking to Afear there, obviously confirming that he's leaving the club. It seems as if it's going to be an amicable parting of ways there.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a misconception that when players depart a club that it always has to be not in good circumstances. I think I've spoken throughout the last few months about the dialogue that Ophir and I I've enjoyed during my time here as manager, and that's continued through this period whereby we'd obviously put forward the best contract we could to him, and then him informing me of his decision that his future lay elsewhere. And the great thing was, all along through that process, it was never going to change our relationship and how he was judged. So as long as he continued to play well, train well, he was going to continue to play, and I think we've seen that in his performances again at the weekend. He makes a big save, at an important time in the game. So as well as could be expected in the circumstances, and obviously I think both us as a club and Ophir as a player and as a person want to make sure that his last season here is a successful one.
He was very honest about it and saying he wants to play, he wants to heighten his ambition, but as well financially as well with the age he's at, and he's got a young family that also plays a part in it. Can you understand that as a manager that he sort of perhaps wants to try and set up his family for the future?
Well, one of the things I think that I do as a manager is always trying to remember what it was like to be a player and what decisions I would have to make, what things I would have to consider if I was in those players' shoes, and then also not reflecting on your own experiences post playing as well. So as a manager, I've moved club and understand the opportunity to do so and the timing of it, and then particularly for Ophir now, as he's in his 30s, about the responsibilities you have in life to provide for his family. So I think Ophir knows that. Him and I had very open dialogue about him coming to this decision and what we were doing to try and keep him. So I think I've been fully understanding making the decision. I know it's not been an easy one for him to make, and I'm sure that when the time comes for him to leave here, it will be a difficult moment for him as well.
Just in terms of exits from the club, I think there's stuff been rumbling on for a couple of weeks now about a couple of the younger guys, Murray Johnson and Ethan Laidlaw going down south for bits. I don't know if you can on it, but considering Ryan Porteous had interest last month as well, it shows that the academy's doing something.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a reflection on not me, but certainly in terms of Ethan and Murray Johnson, it's not a reflection on me, it's a reflection of Eddie May and Gareth Evans and all the guys who have endured a difficult year in terms of not being able to come to work on a regular basis. The job they've done with those players, the fact that they become of interest to clubs and clubs who want to try and take them from us in terms of paying a fee. And you mentioned Ryan, when you add Josh Doyd to that in terms of actually coming through that development stage within our academy. I know he wasn't in it prior to that. It paints him in a good light. So the challenge is obviously for us to try and keep as many of the good ones as we can, to try and progress them at first team level. And then if we're not doing that, then we can backfill in the appropriate way as well and ensure that we still have that strength within the academy and the development squad.
Could it show perhaps the academy for bringing players through into the first team perhaps has been subject to a wee bit of criticism in recent years, but if you have got guys going down south for trials at Premier League club, Josh Doyd, Ryan Porteous doing well in the first team, shows that there's perhaps a decent crop coming your way?
Well, you need I think you need things to come together in that respect. So I think through various times every club can be looked at and say, are they bringing enough young players through? But the truth is, you need to make a judgment and call whether they're good enough and ready enough, and then you need to be willing to give them an opportunity and be in the right circumstances to give them opportunity. And so I think for us, we've managed to hopefully marry the two together over the course of the past season and a bit. And we've introduced young players in the squad, we've introduced young players to our training environment, and there's been progress made in respect to the development of those players. It's just making sure we continue to do that. I said at the moment we've got probably a little bit of a hole that we need to deal with in terms of young players, because we've got around 15, 16 years old, some good ones, a little bit of a gap in between at the moment that we need to try and address over the summer as well, to ensure that we can continue to bring players through. And Josh Doyd's an example of that. You know, he's not a player that was through our academy system, but a player that came to the club mid to later teens, and then we felt as if he was somebody that we could develop then to become a first team player, and that's what we need to continue to do so as well.
In terms of players who are going to be staying at your club, Kevin Nisbet's obviously got his Scotland goal. Good reflection for how his season's going, but for Hibs as a whole to have another player in the setup.
First of all, for Kevin, delighted for him, proud of him. I think it's another significant step forward for him in his career, and the next one will obviously making sure that he gets on the pitch and earns that first cap, and then staying in the squad. His performances for us will obviously help him do that as well. And then for us this season to have the number of players we've had been involved in the national team set up for Scotland, although we've had others obviously representing their own countries, but I think to have as many Hibs players involved in Scotland squads this year has been terrific. Hopefully it's a reflection on the consistency of performance that a lot of these players have provided individually, and then we have as a team this season. And it's certainly a good thing for me as we edge towards the summer and we start to look to recruit again like we always have to do, and that attraction, if you like, for players to come here and know that they could possibly make Scotland squad or regain their place in the Scotland squad, whatever it may be, is a big one. Kevin
was released by Partick Thistle a few years ago. I mean, it shows for younger guys coming through. I mean, you look at Lyndon Dykes in the same vein, that you don't really need to come through an academy. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but he sort of went the hard way around, and there is alternative methods, and he's sort of the biggest stage.
Absolutely, there's a lot of different ways to have a successful career in any walk of life, and if you're very fortunate, it will continue on a smooth upward trajectory and you never have any problems along the way. But the reality for most people is there's a lot of ups and downs and twists and turns, and I think in football the only danger with that is you can be written off at an early age, and also to be able to respond to rejection or perceived failure is not an easy one. So that's the challenge that young players have. It's not just an ability, it's that psychological challenge, overcoming that disappointment. So those players you mentioned are examples of that. Kevin's another one, and quite often the decision that's made for them to be let go by a club at a certain time is maybe at that time the right one, and it just so happens that that decision helps a player reassess what they need to do to go on and have a career in the game. And I think Kevin would speak about that and admit to that. I think he would say he's probably a different player and a different person than he perhaps was at that time, and it's good that he's been able to channel that in the right way and be able to progress his career in the way he has. And for him, I speak to him a lot about it, is making sure that this is just another step forward. He's still got lots of ones hopefully ahead of him.
I mean, all these players playing on big stages for Scotland, perhaps going on to the Euros, makes your job of keeping them easy?
No, and I think it's just part of the role, and I think the time when our players are involved in national teams and subject of transfer attention, it can only usually mean that you're performing well as a team, and it just goes hand in hand, and I'm okay with that. I would rather we were where we are in the league and getting to the latter stages of cups and trying to win a cup, trying to play in Europe, and I'm losing players through other teams wanting them than bobbing around and nobody being interested in anything we're doing. So it's okay, it's problem solving all the time. If we do lose players because they've been that good, then we just got to find other ones to replace them and make them and improve them and make them better as well. Thank you.
Jack, just on Kevin, is that the challenge for him now, that this Scotland call-up isn't a one-off, and it's time really to remain consistent and be in the setup regularly?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think there is a moment for him just to enjoy it, in terms of that that recognition of being called up by your country and the achievement of it, and something for him and his family to be very proud of. And then once you take that in and that subsides, it's about then making sure you stay in these squads, making sure you earn caps, making sure you start games. So that's the message to him this week, and I think he knows that, is just making sure it's not, right, okay, that's me as good as it's going to get, or I'm happy with that. It's just continually pushing himself and us continually pushing him. And I think his mindset over recent years has shown that willingness to keep trying to push boundaries and keep getting to an even better level.
Do you think that comes with an added pressure now that he's in the Scotland setup?
No, I think conversely, I think it just galvanises him even more, if you like. I think since the announcement, I see him growing again. He's looked confident and sharp and bright, and he should have that controlled swagger about him. He's got to keep backing up by playing well and scoring goals, but he's been recognised by a really good manager in Steve, that he's been deemed worthy of being in a squad that's got some really good players in it, and has just qualified for a major tournament. So he should take enormous confidence from that, you know, and hopefully we'll see the benefits of that in the coming games starting tomorrow.
Just on tomorrow, what do you make of Livingston this season? They've obviously secured top 6 now.
Well, I think as Davey touched on last week, when they secured that place, it's a significant achievement for them. I think in any season to compete to be in the top 6 is important for a number of clubs, and then when you look at the position they were in not so long ago, in part of the season, whereby I think people were considering them to be fighting out at the bottom, and in the run they went on to propel themselves into the top 6 and then make sure they stay there, was very, very good. So difficult opponents for us as always. We've obviously enjoyed a win at their stadium and then suffered the defeat in our stadium. So we know what we'll face tomorrow in terms of the challenge of it against a team that I think has deservedly earned their place in the top 6. But as I said before last week, it's a really, really big game for us again.
Just lastly, how's the squad looking?
Yeah, just as we were last weekend. So we still have Jamie Murphy suffered an injury just late last week in the build-up to the Ross County game, and it's still rule him out for this weekend. Sean Mackey's been a longer-term absentee, and young Stephen Bradley has a slight injury as well. So same squad as we were for last weekend.
Cheers, Jack.
Thank you.